Well, hi everybody. Welcome back to my channel. I haven't uploaded in a while. This channel was originally to sort of fill in some gaps and some things that we were or weren't doing at Hosanna Tabor Lutheran Church and Emmanuel Lutheran Church. But we've sort of got things working better now, so we haven't needed the channel as much. There are some things I would like to do in the future, so watch this space. I might have some videos coming up again soon. Additionally, right now, there's something I really wanted to say because Halloween's coming up. And we'll get to that, and that's the point of the video in just a minute. As time is going on, pretty soon I'm going to be able to have a big green screen back here so we can have a nice background instead of the shelves with books and just random junk on them. That has been my backdrop so far. But anyway, to the point of this video, Halloween. Is it a Christian holiday? Can Christians celebrate Halloween? Let's look at that. Also, let's look at some of the claims that Halloween is actually a pagan holiday. So you're actually wrong, and everything you know is wrong, and this is the secret truth. But let's dig a little bit deeper in this. So first of all, is Halloween a pagan holiday? Well, it depends on what you're doing with it. If you want to celebrate pagan things, if you want to do pagan things, then I guess it is a pagan holiday. But think about the name, All Hallows Eve, the evening associated with All Saints' Day. Boy, All Saints' Day sounds like a pretty Christian operation there, right? And, of course, in terms of the church calendar, we use sort of an old-fashioned thing where instead of the day starting at midnight each 24 hours, that a liturgical day starts at sundown. So the evening, as we would think of it before a day, is part of that day in liturgical terms. So Christmas Eve is the evening that's associated with Christmas. So All Hallows Eve is the evening associated with All Hallows Day or All Saints Day. It's pretty Christian, right? So if you're celebrating Christian stuff, it's a Christian holiday. If you're not celebrating Christian stuff, it's not a Christian holiday. If you celebrate something named Halloween, but you aren't a Christian and don't believe in All Saints and all of that, then it's not Christian. But if you are a Christian, and that's what you're celebrating on Halloween, then do it to it, right? Oh, but are you saying that trick-or-treating is pagan? No. We're going to get to that a little bit in the second part of this video, but it's a thing. You know, it's not like the act of trick-or-treating is somehow secretly praying to a different god or something. It's going around to your neighbor's houses. You know, kids going around to neighbors' houses asking for candy. That's all it is. It's not pagan. Not inherently so, anyway. So is it pagan to dress up in costumes? No. Some pastors I know of have even gone so far as to say that dressing up as the devil mocks Satan and his kingdom, that it mocks demonic stuff, and that's inherently Christian, is saying to the devil, you have no more power over me because Christ has won the victory. So they would say even dressing up as Satan is a Christian act because it's mocking the power of the devil that has been broken by the victory of Jesus Christ on the cross. Okay. But what about the argument that actually Halloween is the pagan Samhain, and that it's one of the ancient Celtic Druids' Sabbats, and all of this stuff, and that trick-or-treating is actually guising, and it's this ancient... Well, that was all made up by a Welsh guy named Edward Williams. So around the same time that George Washington and company were establishing early America, so the end of the 1700s, beginning of the 1800s, there was this guy in Wales named Edward Williams who was part of what's called the Romantic movement. So this is very early in the Romantic movement. what's the Romantic movement? Well, it's people who were bored with the way the world seemed, so they decided to introduce a little bit more magic and a little bit more emotion and a little bit more beauty. So one of the things that happened is, particularly with Edward Williams, is he started going by Iolo Morgannwch, which was his bardic name. And he was a bard, and he was going to translate all this ancient Welsh poetry into English, and he did that. But then he started making stuff up. He started making up, oh yeah, I found this ancient Druid text that tells us what the Druids did. No, he didn't. He made it up. He made it up. We know extremely little about the Druids. There's a tiny bit that we know from archaeology, and there's a little bit we know from what the Romans said, and there's a little bit we know from what Christians said in cultures that previously had practiced Druidism. But that doesn't add up to much. Most of what we know is that the Druids practiced human sacrifice, because the archaeology can show human remains with, knife marks in them and stuff. That's most of what we know about Druids. There's some stuff, what's called the Gundestrup Cauldron, which is this big metal bowl with images that we assume had something to do with ancient Celtic paganism, but we don't know for sure. We have some Irish and Welsh myths that were written down after the Irish and Welsh became Christian, and they were written by Christians. And so there's a lot of Christian themes in there. And so all of this, the Celts and Druids were doing this first, and Christians borrowed. Nope. Christian writers who were writing down themes about ancient religions that were no longer practiced read their own religion into it. And so a lot of this stuff, that we think we know about Druids, it's sort of filtered down. Back 200-300 years ago, this was it seemed like it was cutting edge scholarship, and for a long time, people just sort of absorbed it and assumed that this was all true and this was all cutting edge research into the Druids. But it turned out not to be, once people started examining where Iolo Morgannwch, or this Edward Williams guy, was getting his ideas. It just turned out not to be true. So, okay. But what about the Brothers Grimm, right? The fairy tale guys. They collected all of these fairy tales. They went around Germany, so this isn't like British myths and this isn't Celtic stuff, but they went around Germany and they collected all of these myths, right? These myths that were preserved as fairy tales. No, they wrote down folk tales that they said might have some connection to the pre-Christian pagan beliefs of Germans, but then again might not. But what about all this Viking stuff? What about Snorri Sturluson and the Prose Edda and the Poetic Edda? Well, some of the poems that are preserved are probably oral traditions that go back to the Viking Age, but a lot of that is people digesting and editing ideas that had been passed down to them, but by the time it's being written by Christians. Actually, some of that Icelandic stuff, by the time it's written by Lutherans. That's how late it shows up into the Renaissance, that Iceland had already formally switched over to Lutheranism from Catholicism. Ooh. So a lot of these sources that purport to tell us what ancient Druids were doing, ancient pagans were doing, it's either speculation or it's totally made up. Another source of a lot of it, sometimes you hear this story, and this is like the basis of the Da Vinci Code, and it's baked into Wicca. It's like this is the background of where Wicca comes from. It's in a lot of things, especially once it filters down into the popular imagination into the 20th century, but it comes from the 19th century originally. There was a guy, Sir James Frazer, who wrote a book. He said he went to Italy and found this still surviving cult of the Roman goddess Diana, and all of these rituals and practices. And he said that by comparing all these different sources and documents, he had discovered that early humanity was always run by like the elder women of the tribe, and originally there was the worship of an earth goddess, and that all of this was suppressed by Mesopotamian priest kings, and that Mesopotamia went off the rails by becoming patriarchal instead of matriarchal. Well, again, Fraser made that all up too. Just made it up. There's some like hints of truth in there that there were matriarchal cultures. For instance, the Iroquois, in the past. But this thing that there's this universal mother goddess that all cultures used to worship, no, that's made up. So he made that up, and like later authors built on this idea. Carl Jung was big on this. I may have complained about Carl Jung in previous videos. Well, this is why. Because Carl Jung based his theories on just this made up stuff. Just pulled out of thin air. And Carl Jung pulled more out of thin air. And Joseph Campbell building on Carl Jung and Fraser. So Joseph Campbell just made stuff up. And some of you may be familiar with Joseph Campbell because he was the inspiration for Star Wars. But again, like, there is not rigorous anthropology behind this. And if Campbell is building on Jung and Jung is building on Fraser, and Fraser was essentially just a liar. Well, I mean, a little more than a liar. Some of it was that he was just a sloppy scholar. But it's made up. It's speculation at best if you're talking about the Brothers Grimm, and just smoke and mirrors if you're talking about some of these other guys. So all of this stuff, this big industry of, I know better than you, what you know is wrong, really Halloween is pagan, really there's this long tradition of witches. No! It's made up in the last 200 years. This isn't really what the ancient world was like. And in a way, I hate to say this because it's like I began at the beginning of this video talking about the Romantic movement and people who felt that the world was confining and boring and just this incredible world weariness and ennui and everything. And they're trying to find some magic or something special, something that doesn't feel boring and overused, something that feels different and magical again, like childhood was. And I really hate to take that away from anybody. Some of it is that people feel special when they know the real truth, the real hidden secret that the man doesn't want you to know, that the successors of Mesopotamian priests don't want you to know. Which, by the way, if you actually read the Bible isn't the successors of Mesopotamian priests. It's pretty anti-Mesopotamian priest. And many of the Mesopotamian priests were actually women. Well, anyway. So it can feel good to believe in this stuff. And I sort of hate to crush that for anybody. But at the same time, it's a lie. It's a lie or it's a mistake at best. And it just rubs me the wrong way that people go around insisting, that this, that, and the other thing is pagan. Sometimes Christians go around insisting that this, that, or the other thing is pagan. Maybe I'll insert something here from another Lutheran pastor. He's got kind of a series of cartoons that sort of touch on this topic a little bit and explain some of what I'm saying in a more humorous way, I guess. I'll post links to it too, so you can go watch his stuff. But anyway, there's a lot of well-meaning people who want to believe this stuff for one reason or another. but it's just not true. And it's kind of annoying, frankly, to be told that my holiday that I'm celebrating my way is really something else, and I don't really know what I'm doing. You know, that somebody else knows better than I do what I'm doing. But going back to my intro to this video, let's say it is all true. Let's say there really is the suppressed divine feminine, which is what Dan Brown called this whole theory in the Da Vinci Code. Let's say that that's true. Let's say there really was a line of witches that survived until Gerald Gardner could write about them. He was the inventor of Wicca, by the way. Let's say that James Frazer really did find the priestesses of Diana and all of that, and that All Saints' Day was conveniently moved to the end of October and beginning of November, not because that time of year in the Northern Hemisphere just kind of makes people think about death because things in nature are dying, and statistically speaking, a lot of people do die in November. Having done a lot of funerals, anecdotally, I can tell you November is the busiest month for funerals. But anyway, let's say it's not coincidental at all that the church put it there on purpose to suppress a Celtic Sabbath, which, by the way, why would the ancient Celts be using a Hebrew word that doesn't exist in Celtic languages? Why would they be using that Hebrew foreign word to describe their holidays? Well, anyway, let's say it is all true, and the church really is trying to suppress something. Well, here I am, 2,000 years later, celebrating the passing on of people I loved and God taking care of them in the afterlife. So what if somebody else did something else on that day historically? So what if it was done that way originally? It's not what I'm doing now, right? So I guess this video is just me saying I'm really tired of all the stuff you see this time of year. People trying to claim All Saints' Day as a pagan holiday, especially when it's based on shady scholarship and 200 years of smoke and mirrors. All right, well, that's what I've got for now. Maybe I'll be back with another video soon. I kind of hope so. But I'm kind of busy with the two churches and a lot of other things going on. Had another baby. That's been taking up a lot of time lately. So I'll see what I can do. Hopefully I'll have the green screen up next time. And thanks for watching. And if you're interested in checking out a church, if you're interested in checking out our religion, and you're in the Detroit area, feel free to stop by Hosanna Tabor Lutheran Church in Redford or Emmanuel Lutheran Church in Dearborn Heights. We'd love to see you. And see you next time, whenever that ends up being.